Let's talk about and look at and understand how the inserts work on the Tascam mixer. So on the back of the mixer, you have your row of microphone inputs, and beneath that we have a row of the line inputs, and beneath that we have a row of inserts. Now the only thing that can come out of this insert is whatever I plug in right here or right here. There's no way to address and send another signal out of here. So I can't take, for example, this microphone input and have it sent out over here. The only thing that's going to come out of there, I'm pretty sure it's all done analog. It's before it's even in the digital domain, I believe. It's going to be coming from here. The signal gets interrupted essentially before it goes in for processing into the Tascam, and it comes out here. And the type of cable that you use is one of these kind of cables. So that on one end you have a TRS, which has essentially, it has the ability to both send and receive. The tip is going to be, I believe, is the sending part. And here on this cable, you can see the gray is marked tip. I didn't even put that on there. This is kind of a standard type of cable for this job. The tip, this guy, would be then sending the signal to the input of an external device. And this guy's for returning, so that you can just use one jack. That way you just use one jack to do both the jobs of sending and receiving. It's less messy and less clutter. But that's for sending to external devices. Now let me say a word about this. This is sort of, let's talk about the philosophy of it. This is a great idea when you want to set this up in a, maybe not permanent, but in a closer to permanent situation where you just have, for example, a certain microphone input. You've made the decision that you want that input to be, as a standard operating procedure, you want that input to do the job and be processed by an external gate or compressor device. And so all the time, otherwise, so you don't have to repatch it. This is something, I wouldn't think of doing this and repatching and repatching and repatching. If you're going to use that, we'll look at another tool for doing that. But this is sort of a good way to think of doing this on a semi-permanent basis. That you are going to say, for example, you do vocals here and you've got a vocal processor that you like to use on the vocals. So you plug that in and you keep it plugged in virtually all the time, and that's the way you operate. And so every time you're using this signal, the outboard, you're using the outboard at the same time to affect and process it before it goes into the Tascam. Now, the Tascam also has what they call the soft inserts. Now, the soft inserts work in a different way, and it took a while for me to kind of figure out why they had set it up the way they did, but after I figured it out, it does make good sense. The soft inserts are, but the reason it was confusing for me is you could do the same thing and get the same results in different screens on the Tascam. But the way that the logic behind this is so that you can go ahead and set up your compressors or gates. From here on out, let me just call them compressors. Simplify it. So let's say if I had 3 compressors, I could go ahead and decide on a routing, how I wanted to route these signals out for these compressors. I could set them up, plug them in, and then for example, for my example, I have the compressors going out auxiliary send 1, coming back on auxiliary return 1, auxiliary send 2 to the second compressor, coming back on 2. Same thing in like manner the third one. So 3 separate compressors, and the way this would work is I'll just leave these like this, and then on the fly, once I've set that up, I can come in on the fly and go to any one of these compressors and send any track, any bus, any auxiliary, or any or the stereo mix. I could send those at any moment. I could very quickly decide what I want to have, what I want to use that device for in a given mix. Now you'll notice that if I want to set up a new one, I can choose a mic line input As a return, now I'll sacrifice one of my mic line inputs as a return, but I cannot choose a mic line input or a mic line as a send. That's what I was telling you. The mic lines, I'm spinning the wheel, nothing's happening here. I'm going around and nothing happens. That's because there's no place on the mic lines to send something. Those inserts don't do that job, and you cannot address those here. But what I can do is I could use my ADAT outs, I could use TIDF outs, I can use my assignable outs, I can use the slots. You could actually use, for example, kind of an unusual use for it. What you could do is if you were doing a live show and you had a really powerful, fast computer with a very low latency, and you had say the FireWire card in slot 1, you could use the FireWire card to send signals and then return those signals, and you could put processing going on the laptop and have those pre-processing the signal even before you start working with it in the Tascam, on the Tascam board. So this allows you to, again, use those compressors, use gates, and to set those up in advance, and then on the fly make a decision what channel that you'll be sending to those machines when you're working. Two real quick things. The pre means that if you select pre, it's going to be sent pre-fader. The on and off gives you the ability to turn off the insert so that the insert's disengaged. And then I thought it was, if it wasn't already clear in the video, I was hoping to make it clear. The advantage of using in the back, one advantage of hooking things up back here again, is that when you hook things up in the back, you don't lose a channel. You don't lose one of your assignable sends, you don't lose any outputs, and you don't lose any inputs. It's done without affecting your input or output count. You still would have just as many inputs and outputs as you did without using the inserts. When you do the soft inserts, you lose one of your outputs, whether you lose it from the ADAT or whether or not you lose it from an assignable send, from the TIDF out. You lose that. So you're not able to use it for something else. In other words, you wouldn't be able to use it, for example, if you were using those ADATs, if you're using your ADATs to record, you wouldn't be able to also use them to do, at least not with standard devices, you wouldn't be able to use it to record and to also be able to run a compressor. Once you've assigned that ADAT out, it's busy doing the job of the insert. And you also lose a return. Any of the returns you use, that's an input that's now has a job being done, and you can't use it as an input to a channel on the board because it's already in use. So, if you loaded up these 16 inputs and outputs, these 16 sends and returns, you're probably going to get in a situation where having to use either TIDF or ADAT or something else, one of the other slots, to do the job, because again, every time you're using one of these, you're also losing its ability to do a standard job of bringing in a unique mic or a line, etc. I hope that made a lot of sense to you and cleared things up for you. Good luck.